Brought to you by Basecamp Ed. I'm Morgan, your host of the Homeschool Curious Podcast. Whether you're deep in the homeschooling world or just starting to get curious, I'm here to bring you inspiring conversations with parents, educators, and business owners navigating the wild, wonderful world of parenting. Let's get curious together. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Becca Wierwille to the podcast. Becca is the award-winning author where she creates heartwarming, faith-filled stories that reminds kids they're wonderfully created for the unique adventures ahead. She's best known for her road trip rescue series, full of road trips, missing dogs, family bonds, forgiveness, and friendship, and her Scout and Barnaby mysteries, funny chapter book starring a clever girl and her perceptive pup solving mysteries at a Christian wilderness camp. In our conversation, we dive into her writing journey, the inspiration behind her books, how she weaves themes of hope, identity, and light into stories for middle grade readers, and why encouraging young hearts matters so much. Whether you're a parent, educator, or just love children's literature, you're in for an uplifting chat. Let's get started. Today's episode is sponsored by Basecamp Ed, a community building app that is free for parents to find local, like-minded families, dedicated teachers, and educational resources. Connect with parents to form your own co-ops, playdates, or groups. Need a math tutor or a sports coach? Teachers can list their credentials. There is also a business platform to discover game-changing educational brands. Take control of your child's educational journey. Visit their website at basecamped.com or download it in the App Store. Homeschooling was never meant to be done alone. It takes a village. Build it with Basecamp Ed. Welcome back to the Homeschool Curious Podcast. I have Becca on today as my guest. So tell me, Becca, just a little bit more about you and your background before we jump in.
Sure. So my name is Becca Wierwille, and I'm a former kindergarten teacher. I'm a mom. I am an author, and I love writing books for kids. And that is what led me to start my publishing company, Beloved Chronicles LLC. So I write so far chapter books and also middle grade. So the 6 to 12-year-old age range is kind of where my different books fall into right now. And I feel really passionate about creating books that parents can trust giving to their kids. They can trust the content in them, while also knowing their kids are going to enjoy a fun adventure.
So you were a kindergarten teacher before this. So now is this your full-time career as being an author and a mom?
Yeah, I'm a stay-at-home mom first. So right now my publishing business kind of goes into the cracks of that life. So I usually wake up early and try to get in some writing time in the mornings before my daughter wakes up. She's a toddler. And then during her nap time is when my other big chunk of work time is. Luckily, she's been pretty consistent with her naps, but it always depends on the season. And then my parents live right down the road, and my mom is so generous and watches my daughter usually 2 afternoons a week. So then I have a longer chunk of work time if I'm going to be recording an interview like this one or doing something where I would rather not be interrupted by a toddler. I have those times as well.
And you mentioned before we jumped on record that she's 3. So do you have plans to homeschool her when she gets a little bit older?
So we don't have a schooling plan yet. We need to create one soon, but we are very homeschool curious, quite fitting for your podcast. Since I've started my publishing business, I go to homeschool conventions every year and have become very familiar with the homeschooling community, honestly, through becoming an author. A lot of my author friends are also homeschool moms, and prior to that, I hadn't really been exposed to that community. Not many of my friends homeschool. I did grow up with some friends who were homeschooled, but of course, as a kid, you see things differently. You don't really see the ins and outs of like their schooling. It was more just like, we were hanging out after school. So I went to public school myself, but there are a lot of things about homeschooling that I really love. I love the flexibility. I love the ability to cater education specifically to your kids, to be able to include real life experiences, and I have some education background myself as a former teacher. So we are interested in the idea, even though we haven't officially decided anything.
So is your 3-year-old, because of just the nature of you and your background, is she already reading?
She's not. Well, she would say so. If you asked her, she'd probably say so. She loves books. loves books. Actually, behind me, if you're watching the video, there is a bookshelf, and my husband just put these shelves in because we had run out of space. And so they're really, really long. My office is in the basement, so they kind of span the wall. And because of that, the old bookshelf I was using was freed up. And so now we call it her bookshelf. And she had a bookshelf upstairs too, but now she has another one in the basement, and she is just overjoyed. And she loves to bring her dolls down here and read them books, or she'll read books to the dogs. And she really does remember, like, if you didn't know, you might think she was reading it because she remembers a lot of the stories. Her favorites she really has memorized. But she's not reading yet.
Yeah. So before you started your company, and maybe if you were still teaching kindergarten, what concerns did you have with children's publishing, and what led you to start your own?
Yeah, so even in teaching kindergarten, I was reading middle grade novels to them. So middle grade novels are written for kids ages like 8 to 12. So think like Charlotte's Web. Like I would read Charlotte's Web or books like that. And it's because that book, I think, makes such a great read aloud. They're not written down to, they're not written with like simplistic vocabulary. They're still a full novel, but they usually have shorter chapters, and they're just really conducive to read alouds. But I started noticing that many of these books, not usually the classics, but many modern kids' books had content that I knew I wouldn't want my students to hear. And even if they were older, granted they were kindergarten students, but even if they were older, I knew if it was my child, I wouldn't want them reading that kind of content in a book either. I really started to have trouble finding clean, fun, heartwarming stories. I am from a Christian family, and I wanted some stories with Christian values. But also I wanted fun adventures that kids would actually enjoy, because sometimes you get those stories that have those like nice family-friendly values, and then it feels like a little sermon where it's like, okay, this feels like we're reading a story all about why not to lie to your parents. And kids can see through that. They're not going to want to read a story all about why they shouldn't lie to their parents. So it's like, okay, there has to be a balance here between having a place for stories with good family-friendly values and also really fun quality storytelling. And actually, even after I had taught kindergarten and was really starting to pursue, there was a little bit of overlap actually. I was already starting to pursue publishing, and originally wasn't thinking I'd start my own company. I was trying to get my books traditionally published, and I had 2 literary agents at different times, and they had pitched multiple of my projects, but we just couldn't find a publisher. And I kind of just wondered if I wasn't writing the books that the publishers were looking for, even if they were books that readers and their families might be looking for.
So you just decided to do it on your own?
Yeah, it was not the easiest decision. I'm very analytical, so I created this big spreadsheet. I had a couple of friends at this point who were authors and also did it independently, and they were doing the thing. They were writing the books, they were publishing them, they weren't waiting for anyone to tell them go, and they had readers who loved their books. So I made this big pro and con list with all these different categories of traditional versus indie publishing. And I had a long conversation with my agent at the time, who was so supportive and so great. And she kind of agreed with a lot of the things I was saying and said that she thought that I would do really well if I decided to go my own way and start my own publishing company. And so that was what I decided to do. I started Beloved Chronicles LLC. I get to build my own publishing team. So even though the term independent publishing might make it sound like there's just one person doing it independently, it's definitely not that. I have editors, I have a cover designer, an illustrator, and now I can publish the books that I feel like God has placed on my heart without trying to get by any publishing gatekeepers.
I love it. Good for you. So tell us a little bit about the books that you have and that you write right now.
So my first series is called the Road Trip Rescue series, and it includes 3 contemporary road trip adventures for kids ages 8 to 12. It starts with book 1 is the story of a girl named Kimmy, and she sets off on a road trip to try to find her long lost dog. And Kimmy was actually born with one hand, which I haven't mentioned yet, but I was also born with one hand, so it was really fun to include that in the story. These books are really great for kids who love dogs or travel and cozy friendship stories. That's really how I would describe those books. And then I also have a new series, which just came out early this year. So we had one come out in January, one in February, and then book 3 comes out in March, yes.
Next month.
Next month. Yeah. Publishing all 3. They're chapter books. They're a little bit shorter. And so when a kid finds a chapter book series that they really love, think like Magic Treehouse. I mean, they want to dive in and read dozens of them. Not that I'm going to write dozens necessarily, but I wanted to have a couple stories ready to go. So these are called the Scout and Barnaby Mysteries. stories. They are funny, heartwarming chapter books about a girl and her dog who solve mysteries together at a Christian wilderness camp. Families have really enjoyed them as family read-alouds because they're funny and have short chapters. They do have a few illustrations. And there is actually a free audiobook or ebook of book 1 that you can download from my website, which is just beccawierwille.com, if you want to see if the series is a good fit for your family.
I love that. Are you the one that reads them aloud too?
I'm not. I have a professional audiobook narrator. I love to read stories.
You have like a great
Thank
voice.
you. Thank you. The problem is I don't think I could consistently do the character voices. I'm sure I could do character voices, but I think they'd change every time the characters came on the scene. And my audiobook narrator does a fabulous job. So she has consistent voices.
So your more newer one, the Scout and Barnaby, that is ages like 6 to 10. Is that correct?
Yeah. Ages 6 to 10 is what I'm saying. So the character Scout is 10 years old. Usually kids don't want to read about a character who's younger than them. So usually up to 10. I have had some older readers enjoy it, especially if they just want a book that doesn't feel as dense, like if they're still a little bit intimidated by longer books. And usually on the younger end of that age range, they tend to enjoy it more as like a read aloud, but it depends very much on the child's reading level.
Well, my oldest is 5 and he's starting to express interest in wanting to read. But me as a new mom trying to homeschool, I thought I needed to do all the right things and that he's already 5, he should be reading. And he just was not enjoying me trying to teach him how to read. Mm-hmm. But more recently, I've seen that he is expressing more interest. I didn't want to like push it with him, but he's been really enjoying read alouds. I can tell that he is old enough now to fully comprehend a story now.
Oh, that's so exciting. That's such a fun place for it to be as a parent too, to get to enjoy that bonding experience of getting to experience a story together. And that was part of with the Scout and Barnaby mysteries. I really wanted those shorter chapters, but I still wanted it to feel like a full story. It's not an easy like an early easy reader. The vocabulary, there's still like some big vocab words, and it still feels like a full story, just shorter. And so it depends on the child's reading level, but I'd say either young readers who are advanced or readers who are a little bit older but still trying to gain that confidence to read longer works, and then also family read alouds.
Yeah. And then your other series, the Road Trip Rescue series, is for a little bit of an older age range. So they often try to teach real emotions that children are going to feel and struggle with, like loss and belonging and identity. So tell us a little bit about how you address it in your books and why it's important to you.
Yeah, in each of my road trip rescue books, the characters experience some real emotions. In the first book, Kimmy struggles with some anxiety. She asks the question, what if, a lot. She has some insecurity, particularly related to her arm. At the start of the story, she only likes to wear long sleeves so she can hide her arm. She also deals with a lot of loss. She has lost her dog prior to the start of the story. She's also lost her best friend. And her best friend had betrayed her, so there was a loss of a friendship. And these feelings, whether that be fear or loss, they are universal emotions that kids experience. And they might not be experiencing them in the same ways as these characters, but they know that the world is broken. They see pain in the lives of others around them. They feel it in their own lives. And so I think including these deeper themes in Kidlit is important because it's a good way for kids to develop empathy too. They can see themselves in the stories and also they can see others. So one way I've heard this described is that books can be both windows and mirrors. So a book that's a mirror is like you read the book and it's like you're seeing yourself reflected back at you. You're seeing your own experience. And it's really important for kids to be able to read books that are mirrors, which is why it's important to be able to have a diverse books that are reflecting lots of different experiences. And it's also important to read books as windows, which is like seeing someone or something new when you look through that window, an experience that's different than your own. So even when a reader might not relate specifically to something a character goes through, they can start to understand or be aware of a different experience, which is really all about growing empathy. So I think stories, when they're done well, can do more than entertain. They're really connecting us to the emotions and struggles of others, our own emotions, our own struggles too.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were growing up, did you just love reading? How did you really get into being an author and writing children's books?
I always loved reading and writing. Some of my earliest like storytelling memories. I mean, even before I could write, I remember sitting in church and looking at the church hymnal and pretending it was a story and just making up the story in my mind. I remember at school, in elementary school, I was on the late bus, which basically just meant we had to sit in the cafeteria a little bit extra and wait for our bus to come. And all the other kids were like playing games or maybe starting on their homework. I don't know. But I had this little purple notebook and I was jotting down all sorts of stories.
Aww.
So I just, from a very low, and I was also like the one who was like, in bed with the covers over my head and a little flashlight reading a book after I was supposed to be asleep. So just love stories.
One of my best friends, like when I was in elementary school, was like you. She loved books to the point where if she was like in trouble, her timeout was you can't have your books in your room.
Torture.
And that was like that was like torture for her.
Yeah, it's not my biggest struggle, but one of my like struggles like that with like loving to read so much was that for school we were supposed to read books. They had accelerated reader points. There were certain books that you could take quizzes with. And so we were supposed to read AR books so we could get AR points, because then there was like a competition too to see who could get the most AR points. Well, I loved to read so much that I feel like I read all the good AR books and all that was left was like books that weren't so good. I was like, I need to make more AR books.
So with your background as being a kindergarten teacher and also a children's author, I bet you have so many good tips for parents like me who are overwhelmed trying to teach our little ones how to read. Do you have any good tips and tricks for us?
Well, maybe more when it comes, I feel like I haven't yet gotten to the point where I'm teaching my daughter to read, but to love reading, fostering that love of reading. I think, so one of the biggest things I'd say starting with is to like define your family's values and then set your entertainment boundaries kind of based on those values, so you know what kind of books do you want in your house? What kind of books do you not feel comfortable having in your house? Like, it's important to be able to have those conversations. And then within those boundaries, choosing a variety of books that fit within that to expose your kids to a variety of genres, a variety of experiences. It's that windows and mirrors thing again. But also, a lot of times a child isn't going to really fall in love with reading until they read a book or listen to a book being read that really connects with them, whether it's the character connecting with them or whether it's the genre. Like maybe you have a kid who really, really loves fantasy, but they've never read a fantasy book before and they just don't know it. So being able to read a variety of books. I would say finding resources you trust to help connect you with great books. I do co-host a Christian book podcast for kids called Ice Cream with Authors, and that can be a good resource, but there are lots of other great ones. And then I would really just say reading books out loud a lot. Of course, encouraging independent reading is important too, but when you're first starting to try to foster that love of reading, just reading books aloud can be a beautiful thing to do as a family, a beautiful bonding experience, and can also help nurture that love. You're creating a shared family experience. I love the book, The Read Aloud Family by Sarah Mackenzie. She is the founder of the Read Aloud Revival podcast. And I was a little skeptical. I'd had this book recommended to me and I thought, why do I need to read a book about reading aloud? I'm already convinced. I already know I want to read aloud, but I really do recommend it because she just shares so many great practical tips. She talks about reading to your kids, not just when they're little and not just before they can read themselves, but even when they're teens. What are some ways you can still make that part of your family? So those are some starting places I'd recommend.
Those are great. And then you did a little snippet about a podcast that you co-host. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Ice Cream with Authors is a Christian book podcast for kids. It's kind of like mini author visits. So it's for kids
to listen to, not
It's for
adults.
kids to listen to.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
However, adults, I know some families do listen to it together, and also it's a great way for parents to find books. Like if you just look at the authors we've had on the show. So basically, yeah, it's like mini author visits for kids, so that kids can hear about authors, they can hear about new books they might like. In each episode,
we just unique idea. I've never heard of it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love doing author visits to schools and homeschool groups myself, but not every kid has a chance to meet an author at an in-person visit or event. And I know when I was younger, I used to think, I can't actually be an author. Like those are like, some celebrity way out there. I didn't really think of authors as being like regular people. So I feel like it's so important for kids who love storytelling to be able to meet authors. So that was kind of the goal of our podcast. We do little interviews with authors, play a clip from their book. We also have special episodes where we go behind the scenes of the publishing process for young writers. But where I think it can be helpful to parents, we have official content guidelines that we use to screen the books that we feature on our show. And you can read those guidelines on our website. It's icecreamwithauthors.com, or you can listen to it on the first episode of the show, which is geared toward parents. But basically, we want to feature books that use language in a way that glorifies God, honors God's design for us in our relationship, stewards the talents he's given us, that dwell on hope and life. Spiritual content would focus on a relationship with Jesus and not other kind of spiritual content. So we want to provide a place that kids can go and they can listen to authors and they can learn more about writing, and also that parents can maybe find some good book recommendations as well.
That's a great, cool idea. And this reminds me, like, the conversation that we're having right now. Have you heard of a company called Big Sky Life Books?
I have not.
Okay, after the podcast, you have to go.
Okay.
I feel like you need to meet the owner, Lindsay. So my podcast episode hasn't even come out yet, but I have Lindsay on, and she started a business that it's like her and her husband doing it out of their house, but they read and vet children's books and content, and they only sell in their own online bookstore books that they have approved. But they do more of like a guideline, kind of like what you were talking about, where they will talk about maybe something that a parent should be aware of, and the mom and dad can read it and decide, okay, I want my child to read that, or no, I'm not comfortable with that. So she's not like, yes, read this, or no, don't read it. It's more like, this is what we've gathered from this book. In this chapter, they use the Lord's name in vain. Like, are you okay with that? But having her on and having you on, it's like a very similar episode. But cool. I feel like you guys should have a really cool partnership.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to her. That sounds really cool. It reminds me of Plugged In, or like other resources where it's like, okay, here's the book, or here's the entertainment, or whatever it is, and here's some things that are really good, and here's some things to maybe like just be aware of, so and that's part of it too, is just to be aware of what your kids are reading and to be willing to have those conversations and to know what you're ready to have conversations about. Those are all important things when you're considering what books to read.
Well, and moms don't have time to sit and read, and that was what we talked about. And there's one mom that I love to follow, and she posted like right around the time that we did that recording about how her daughter, who's like, I think either 8th or 9th grade. So she's mature enough to know that something's not right. And the mom had never read the book. And so the daughter actually brought it to her mom, like, read this chapter. What do you think about it? And it's basically mean girl energy in high school. These high school girls are kind of bullying this other girl, but in the book it wasn't bad. And the daughter was like, I'm really uncomfortable with that. They're not being nice to this girl. And the mom was like, I can't even believe I gave that to my daughter to read. I didn't know she's mature enough to bring it to me and think that it wasn't right, but we don't have time to sit and read every single book.
Yeah, that is if you have a voracious reader, you're not going to be able to keep up with them and to always be screening every book that they read. Finding resources where you know that you trust the creator to at least to be doing some of the research to get you through that first step of the process. It is really that story in particular. I'm like, oh, how sweet. And showing of the like trusting relationship that they've built, that the daughter was going to the mom with the story and to say, hey, will you read this and let me know what you think? I really like this story for that reason.
So right now your books kind of range like 6 to 12-ish. Have you considered doing high school level type of novels? Or
maybe eventually. I'm not closed off to any ideas. I will say I have so many ideas in the middle grade age range. I think most of my ideas are like in that 8 to 12, like the Road Trip Rescue series. The Scout and Barnaby mysteries will probably be more ongoing. So I'm thinking I could write a couple more books in that series and then maybe do a different project. But I definitely wouldn't be opposed to doing young adult at some point in the future. It just kind of depends on where I feel the Lord leading me and what ideas he's placed on my heart.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was so nice to meet you. And I am getting your Scout and Barnaby mysteries. I'm so excited to try to read them to my 5-year-old. I feel like you've mentioned 6 to 10, but like if I'm reading them, I feel like it's
I've had 5-year-olds do it as a family read aloud too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, thank you. I hope that you guys enjoy them. You'll have to let me know how it goes. And thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed our conversation.
This has been a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. If you made it all the way to the end, you are amazing. Thank you for listening and your support. Let's stay connected, and here are my tasks for you. Subscribe, like, and share on your favorite podcast app or on my website, basecamped.com. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook at basecamped.app, and go download Basecamp if you haven't already. Leave a comment and spread the love.